Welcome to Surf Strong Elite, Conversations for a Healthy Surf Community. I'm your host, Greg Finch. Before we dive in, I want to let you know that these episodes will either stream or be recorded live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So we encourage you to join in, ask questions, make comments. If you follow myself, Greg Finch, or Surf Strong Fit on any of those channels, you can participate in the conversation and ask questions. We encourage you to do so. It makes the episodes dynamic, interesting, and reach more of the surf community. Hey Teddy, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the Surf Strong Elite Show.
Right on, Greg. Thank you for having me, man. This is it's a pleasure.
Oh yeah, great, awesome. So let's kind of just jump into it. I'd love to hear your take on, you've been surfing so long. I looked back on your bio a little bit. You started surfing when you were 13.
Right.
So what is the same today for you when you paddle out, and what's different?
Right. Well, shoot, like it said, like my bio stated, it's kind of like I started late as far as surfing. If you look at, like, my son's 10 and he started surfing when he was 5 or 6, pushing him on a soft top and things like that. So I started late in those standards, but the one thing that's kept me coming back is just the kind of the what is it, like the what do I want to say? It's almost like the trying to learn. I'm still learning to this day. You know what I mean? So constantly progressing in little tiny increments to where, I didn't learn the things, and I'm, like I said, I'm still learning. So that's what's always been bringing me back to this whole game. Surfing's a beautiful sport. So it's one of those things where you constantly grow, you constantly eat it. You're constantly, getting wiped out. You're constantly digging rails, so every wave isn't perfect. You're trying to look for the good one. It's like, so all of that stuff is very challenging. And that's what I think has always drawn me back to surfing.
Yeah, isn't that so interesting? So for people that don't surf, like if I get with family or something, and sometimes the surfing will come up and they'll ask about it, and it's really hard to convey to them that this thing you've done for 35 years in my case, right. You will have sessions where it's like you've never surfed before.
For sure.
And it sounds so frustrating, and it can be, of course, but what it really is it's just so grounding.
Right.
You're so present in that moment, and you just have to laugh. Like, you just come up kind of laughing. So like, how did I possibly blow that? There's something about that ultimate presence that it just brings us back, and being humbled like that is good for almost every other part of your life.
That's one of the things that I was just about to emphasize on, is the humbleness that you get out of surfing. It's like, I don't think that you could put yourself in any position to where you're going to get held down, not be able to breathe for so long. You come up winded, you're frustrated, you're consistently getting humbled by the ocean, by Mother Nature, by things that are out of your control. And that's just like how life is. You get thrown curveballs left and right all day long, and you have to learn how to adapt. You have to learn how to overcome. You have to learn how to be positive, to persevere, stay, like I said, stay absolutely positive throughout the whole journey. And it's just like life, so it's one of the most humbling experiences that you could ever have, even to this day for me. So it's, you still get scared. I mean, I'm still scared all the time, when the waves are pumping. So that's one of those things also that, just like life too, man, it's crazy.
Yeah. It's like that, training for something and feeling prepared, but then being slightly outside your comfort zone. That really is life, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just on a previous conversation I just had, it was talking about a book, and basically it was just talking about being so comfortable. And of course, our brains love that. Our brains love that idea. It's survival at its real primal center.
Right.
It's keeping this alive to make sure that our genes pass on, to take it existential.
For sure.
But it just pulls our worlds down. So there is when you have surfing in your life, that as our example, it's such an immediate place to know that that's going to happen. And it can happen, like you said, when it's pumping, but it can also happen in just these random times, like those surprises.
Yep.
you're on a small day, you're on a longboard, you're not really paying attention, and this thing just nails you.
Yes.
And it does. It gives you that immediate, like, oh yeah, I have to pay attention. I have to
Yep.
be right here. I can't be anywhere else.
Yeah, that's it. So I live down here in Huntington Beach, as you know, or if
Mm-hmm.
people that don't know, I live in Huntington Beach, and it doesn't really get that big. I mean, there is some instances where it does get pretty big, south swells, west swells, things like that, but it's not like a Hawaii big. So when it does get a little bit more energy, there's some swell coming in. I'll find myself in those mornings where there's nobody really out, and I'm kind of the first person there, which I like to be. I'm really focusing on my breath, like learning how to breathe in through my nose and belly breath and things like that to slow myself down, to try to get in the flow of the ocean and things like that. And then also when it's small, we have a ton of stingrays over here. And so you have to constantly remind yourself about, there's Mother Nature, there's stingrays, you got to shuffle your feet. And the first second that you don't, you get hit. So that's kind of one of those things too, where it's very grounding. And even if it's small or big, it's crowded, it's not crowded, there's stingrays, so it's like, it's a constant challenge, man.
Yeah, it's just and that's the other part of it. Circling back almost to that presence idea of it is, that's the other humbling part is we have this human arrogance, if you will, right? That we're in charge. It's false, of course, but we tell ourselves this. And the minute you step in the ocean, it's so clearly that's not true. And that's that reminder of being there. And like I grew up in Southern California as well. I was a Valley kid,
Right.
in Arcadia. And so, yeah, the first time I heard the term, for those that, aren't used to it down there, the stingray shuffle, like
That's
you
it.
learn that so early,
That's
or you get hit, or you'll never forget it.
I find like I remember one year, this is like, a decade ago or something like that. I remember I was kind of not really on the right karma path.
Uh-huh.
And maybe I might have been doing something a little bit that I wasn't supposed to be doing, whether I don't know what the instances were, maybe, snaking people or doing something like that. And I got hit 3 times in 1 month. So I figured that those are like my karma reset buttons. You know what I mean? Like, boom, you're out. Okay, boom, you're out. Okay, and then I'm reset. It's like, so I was kind of using that as like my little reset for payback from the ocean.
You have a timeout. You have an ocean nature timeout right now.
Exactly. Those things hurt too, man.
Oh yeah, there's no joke for
Yeah.
sure. So
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
no, yeah. Talk about a little bit about so your break is the Huntington Beach Pier. You surf there a majority of the time, is that right?
Yes. Yep.
So talk a little bit about that for those that are listening that are familiar. These will be familiar ideas of it, but for those that aren't, talk about what that's like. It's considered some of the most crowded surf when it's good. And what's also interesting about it, for those that aren't aware too, is the divergence of ability.
Right.
That's something that I don't think people really think about too much. So you talked about it getting big in other places. If you're someplace that it's, let's say it's a point break and it's pretty technical and it's really pumping, that is a filter. It's going to filter out certain people in the lineup, and people are going to be there that have a certain level of ability. It's still going to be crowded, but you can still be confident that they have a certain skill set. But at the pier, it's not always like that. You have this divergence of ability that can make it really dangerous.
It's pretty welcoming. It's like Beach Boulevard is one of our major outlets to the inland empire. So you could take Beach Boulevard all the way. I grew up in Whittier. So I was kind of, one of those people who had to make the voyage down Beach Boulevard. Whittier's 25 miles away from here. So that's why I kind of got started late in that aspect too. And really, back then, so I'm at the age now where I have established myself pretty well over here in Huntington Beach. I live here, my kids grown up here, everything like that. But in the earlier days, the 2010s, 2005s, it was pretty localized. And I could even go back before that, the 90s, 80s, it was really localized. So north side of the pier was pretty infamous for you wouldn't be able to paddle out there if you didn't know what you were doing. South side, you could go down the beach and kind of get your own little peak and do that stuff. And that's more where the beginners start. North side as well. So it's the pier's kind of more for the local guys back in the day. But now, fast forward to 2022, 2021, 2020, it seemed like there was a big boom in where a lot of people just start surfing now, which is great. It's awesome for the sport. But at the same time, like you were saying, this is a very welcoming beach. You can use the pier if you know if you kind of sit back and just view the pier in that sense, you can tell that there's very easy paddle out on each side of the pier, whether it's a north swell or a south swell. So if there's a north swell, the south side has a very strong current that rips you straight out into the lineup. South swell summer days, the north swell or the north side of the pier rips you out the same way that the other side does, right? So it kind of like gives you this avenue where there's a channel, so to speak, so you sit next to the pier and you can get pulled out. And so that's where a lot of the trouble happens, right there next to the pier. There's a lot of people on longboards, which is great. It's awesome, but it's very crowded. It gets dangerous sometimes in the summertime, not so much in the winter because it's more, the coldness kind of deters people. But in the summertime, it gets pretty crowded, pretty dangerous. A lot of people on soft tops, a lot of kids, and that right there is a very dangerous mix too, because you have kids and longboards and they don't know what they're doing. And then the kids get hurt and then, things like that. So we have our fair share of novice, expert, intermediate, beginner, surf lessons, the whole nine. I mean, it's all there.
Yeah, it's a reminder just for everyone. You just stay aware.
Stay
aware, know your space around you, and do what you can to minimize.
I think the best advice that I would be able to give anybody is just take it slow. It's okay to emphasize the beginner. We were all there at one point or the other. We were all beginners. We were all kooks, so to say, so to speak. Start down the beach. Always. It's super fun down there, Start in the whitewash. Learn how to get on a longboard, on a soft top, things like that. I think what happens nowadays is people are really trying to fast forward into getting into surfing. They see people surfing, they see the lifestyle, they see people shredding, they see people ripping, stuff like that. All of this stuff is very, cell phones make it very easy for you to see all of that stuff in real time. So I think that, it's a hard road. It's a long road to get to that level. And in order for you to get to that level, you have to start, like how they say, you got to crawl before you walk. You have to learn how to multiply and subtract before you divide and before you get into, more complicated things. So just like surfing, start slow. Everybody's there to welcome you as long as you're nice and you pay attention to things and, where you're supposed to be at. So it's, it's cool. I mean, surfing's one of the greatest gifts as long as you take it slow. Otherwise, you kind of get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, and it's also just that much more of enjoyment for
sure.
First person and those around. And you're right. When people do see the lifestyle and everything, there's so many wonderful things about it. But it is that part of it. It is a lifelong pursuit.
For sure.
And that's it. It is not something that you just kind of dabble in because you can and you should. You should. Anything that gets people into the ocean and connected to that and feeling that beauty. Thus, more inclined to protect it and to be involved in protecting it. That's great. Totally. That's great for everybody. But it's that part of it that you're right. I'll never say, you just touched on it earlier. I will never stop learning how to surf.
For sure.
It is, you learn something every time you go in the water.
Yeah.
And so just, if you view it that way, if everybody views it that way, it also takes the pressure off. Because I feel it myself sometimes. It's interesting. I'll catch myself, like I'm in Morro Bay, and so it can get crowded at the Rock. Not Huntington Beach Pier crowded, but but you can spread out. But but I'll catch myself like having these conversations in my head, like that person's getting close to me, like, and I'm having these conversations like there's already a problem. I catch myself doing that, and I go, why are you need to just be right here. You need to just project this enjoyment that you're having immediately right now and stay out of your head that way.
Yep.
And it circles all the way back around to those are why we go in the ocean. It's
Yeah.
those lessons to keep reminding ourselves of what's the most important part of it.
Yep. I feel like too, it's funny that you say that. The times that I have the worst, the times that I'm having a difficult time in the ocean is when I'm kind of in that sense, in that zone in my head, like kind of a little bit mad, a little bit, what they say in surfer terms, eggy. You know what I mean? You're kind of using the wrong approach in the very first place, as opposed to, go out, hey, what's up, guys? It's a great day. Merry Christmas, stuff like that. Like that stuff kind of sets you up into having a better session, having a better day, having more fun. So I think it's just like life too. Same thing. It's all full circle.
Yeah, it's what you're working to manifest, and then of course that's the exact feedback that you're going to get, and then it's going to come together, and then that's what you're cultivating. You're cultivating that feeling, and it's not going to be 100% one way or the other, but you're doing everything you can to have this. It's just having a positive experience, and it is. You got to remind yourself of that, But it's addictive. It's addictive when you're around. Like I have this. There's this local surfer that's been around forever. He just goes by Fraggle. And the guy is just like, I've never seen him not smiling in the water. And he's a great surfer. He has great style. And you see him paddling out and you just feel that way. It's just immediate because he just has manifested that and this is another, this is a little bit of an aside, but do you have people that in your lineup that you never see anywhere else? Like I'll have these people that I've lived in Morro Bay now for, going 20 plus years now. And I don't always surf the same place. I'll move around a little bit, but generally in the same zone. And I'll come in contact with these people that I don't even know their name.
Right.
And I'll be, hey, how's it going, man? And I've seen them for literally 20 years. And the other day, there was a person, I like introduced myself. And I was like, dude, we've surfed together for like 20 years. Where do you live?
Yeah.
He's like, I live in Morro Bay. And I'm like, how have I never run into you? Like, how is that possible? Yep. It's just like this other little community that you don't see anywhere else. Does that happen to you?
I think it's happened to me my whole life. I see it. I pretty much know everybody out on the pier, north side and south side, and I kind of like only see them. I know their schedule. I know when they're going to be there. I know when they're surfing. I know when they're not surfing, and that's it. I kind of just know them by, there's, north side Mike or, south side, like, my friend Kerry, like I know when it's north swell, he's going to be at south side of the pier for sure. So that's it. But yeah, totally.
It's just it's a funny part of that experience, and like, again, it's not unique to surf culture, but because of that location specific and how that is, and the fact that it's so dynamic in the ocean and the water, you might be sitting and waiting for a wave, but there's not a lot of windows. If it's pumping, you're constantly moving and going. So you have these short little snippets of interaction. And so, but some of those people, I see them multiple times a week. Sometimes some of them, I probably see them more than some of their close friends do.
For sure. 100%. Yep. I get it.
Funny?
Yeah, it's super funny.
So one of the things that you have on, and we'll certainly share all your social media and some of the other places people can find you online, Teddy, but you're kind of the master of the first person barrel, certainly at the Huntington Pier. So talk us through that. Like, talk us through how many times it takes you to get that shot that, of course, looks so perfect.
Right. Well,
talk us through your process.
So one of my good friends, Robbie Crawford, and he's a great example of the GoPro, like empty wave stuff, right? So when I first started getting into this whole thing, it was originally from Kalani Rob, one of my good friends. We were doing like POV follow cam stuff. So we would just kind of mess around. He was sponsored by GoPro at the time. And we were kind of good friends, and we were just messing around at the very first part. And then I met Robbie, and then he kind of got me more caught up onto there's a whole another world when it comes to settings and views and where you're supposed to put the camera and how you're supposed to use it and things like that. So I started sniffing around with that. This is maybe about a decade ago, with the GoPro like 3 or something like that. and it had a big bulky case. You know, he walked me through what the settings were and how to get the good shots and stuff like that. So it took me quite a long time to kind of get into getting good shots and it's a trial and error kind of a thing. You have to really spend a lot of homework. You have to do a lot of things that you don't want to do because the waves are good. And if you have a camera, then you so that comes into the selfish part of surfing, right? Because we're all selfish in that some sense, because we all want to get a good wave. We all want to get the clip. We all want to watch ourselves get a good barrel and things like that. So I think that that's a very humbling experience in itself as well, you know, because you could be out there surfing on a very good day with the GoPro, and you come in and you think you got a bunch of shots and you don't have anything. You come in, you review your clips, and there's a bunch of water spots everywhere. So that was very humbling in itself. You have to learn how to maneuver the camera the right way. So I think just a lot of trial and error, man. You know, you really have to spend time with that thing, just like anything that you want to get good at. You really have to put in the time and the effort and be positive with yourself and be honest. You know, you really have to stay persistent with that stuff. It's a very hard thing to kind of get mastered. You know, you have to really spend some time with it, like I said. And then now, you know, I kind of only take it out when the waves are good. So if it's big, I try to take it out. If it's tubing, I try to take it out. Offshore days, I try to take it out. And I mean, that's pretty much it. The only thing is you just have to really spend a lot of time with the thing.
Yeah. It's probably that balance too. Like sometimes you don't want to feel like it's work. Like
it's
you want to feel
work.
like I just want to surf. I just want to connect to the ocean. So it's this balance of those things for sure.
For sure. I mean, the thing is such a nightmare sometimes. You go out there and the battery doesn't work. You go out there and the thing, the card says error, you know, so you have to go in, you have to dry it off. You have to take the battery out and then put it back in. And then, you know, the thing still doesn't work. And then it's a nightmare sometimes. So that's why I personally kind of slowed down on it. Before, a couple years ago, I was really adamant about taking the thing out all the time, trying to get clips, trying to use all the new cameras, all the new extensions, all the new poles, everything like that. So, you know, once you do get excited about it, I encourage whoever it is to keep going with it, because you're going to get a point in your life where you're not going to want to take it out anymore.
Yeah. It's like capturing this point of your life. Like, oh yeah. Because you're right. Earlier, like I'll have seen like some video of me and I'll like, that top turn. I really like the way that top turn feel. And you'll look at it and you're like, doesn't look that great.
I did that this morning, actually. So yeah, I know exactly how you feel, for sure.
So this is one of the questions I like to ask a lot of guests that surf. So describe your last wave, good, bad, or ugly.
Today it was pretty funny. So I was up on the beach with my good friend Ryan Turner. He owns a sugar shack, and then my other longtime friend and my buddy Ryan was up there watching his little girl surf. And the way there's pumping today, right? So there's northwest swell, glassy conditions down here in Huntington. And he's like, I didn't even see you out there. And I'm like, dude, I sat out there for probably about an hour and a half, sitting there. I didn't catch any waves. I didn't do anything. I was kind of watching everybody catch waves around me. I got super cold. By the time it gets cold, I'm done, right? So I basically caught my last wave. I stood up. I barely made it to my feet, and I just belly rode in. And that was it. And then I just went up and I saw my friend Ryan, and I started talking to him, and that was it. I sat on the beach for about 20 minutes with him, talking and, you know, chit-chatting and stuff like that, watching his daughter surf. But yeah, I mean, my last hour of my session was horrible. Sitting there.
And it's interesting that, because when I was younger and that would happen to me, like, you get so frustrated, and you know, you carry that the rest of the day, and then call it experience, or I don't know if you even call it maturity. I don't really go there too much, but it's just this idea where you get to this place where you just have to laugh about it, because if you didn't have those, you wouldn't have the peaks and the elation that come from the other end of the spectrum. And it's that balance of those two things that you just laugh and you go, it's not up to us. Really isn't.
Sometimes
like some days you'll Like, somebody like, it's just not my day today.
I throw in the towel, I paddle in, and then it's funny because even you know, if the waves are really good and I find myself kind of getting a lot of waves, kind of getting a lot of tubes, I'll end it. I'll
Yeah.
end it on, you know, on a really good one. And I'll just say, I feel like I might be taking a little bit too much from Mother Ocean. I'm getting a little too lucky. So I'm just going to go in right now
Yeah.
and just end
Yeah.
it. So I think that that's a great part of surfing too. You know, you mature, like how you said. I know you don't like to use the word, but
Yeah.
I think for sure it's a maturity thing at that point.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm out of here. I'm going to go paddle in. I don't even want to deal with it anymore. I'm gone.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm joking, of course, but
No, for
it
sure.
is growth. It really is growth.
Totally.
It's really just about, because what's interesting too is, again, you know, different times of my surfing life, it would be like, just, okay, we're gonna keep going, I'm gonna surf, you know, I'm surfing for hours, and I'll have days now where, whether it's the window of time I have available to me that day or just whatever, I'll go out and, you know, you maybe paddle into a couple waves and maybe it's only like 20, 30 minutes, but this is the beauty of this is your day is absolutely better.
100%.
It's always going to be better. There's just
Yes.
something about that connection and taking action. And this is another aspect that I've talked about before, but I find so interesting. And it kind of comes back to, I think, a little bit of that primal brain part of it and that comfort idea, which is how often us as surfers can talk ourselves out of paddling out.
Oh
If
my
we get
gosh.
in that cycle, you're just like, oh, I got to do this, or oh, it's kind of, it's not that great, or oh, this, and you have to teach yourself and always remind yourself, just paddle out,
For
just paddle out.
sure.
Don't start to get into that cycle of, oh, well, this or that or the other thing, because waves are just the bonus.
Yep.
It's just the connection to the ocean that is the most important part. And it's really good to remind ourselves not to lose sight of that.
For sure. I think that that's like a, you know, I keep on touching on this, and it's life. You know, it seems like now that as you get older, you get more responsibilities, then you seem like you're more on a time schedule. I only have an hour. I only have 30 minutes. I only have 15. And it's like I'm really surfing in time. You know, I'm only surfing in the windows that I can sometimes. So if you have, sometimes I was even going out and I'd catch 3 waves. That's it. Just 3. Just
Yeah.
because I knew that I had to get in the water, I had to wash it off, I had to go out and I'd just catch 3 waves and that's it. I wasn't going to be too greedy. I wasn't going to want too much. I would just go out, catch 3 waves and come in. Even if I wanted to surf more, I'd have to come in. So it's like, and I think that that's a great part of this whole growth aspect of surfing and maturing and, you know, coming into who you really want to be and things like that. And life, you know, we're all kind of running around with chickens with our heads cut off sometimes and forgetting to say bye to the wife or forgetting to kiss your kids on the cheek and really taking in the things that are what some people really don't have, you know? So it's like, you really have to keep grounded in those aspects too. So it's just life, man. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's definitely it's the appreciation of that. It's the
That's the
appreciation
right
of
word. Yep.
having surfing in your life. It's the appreciation of the things that I almost think of it as like we're almost talking about this in multiple different facets that come back to the same thing, which is it allows you the clarity.
Right.
You know, you talked about like just kind of dusting yourself off. Like I'll use the term like clean out the carburetor.
For
It
sure.
allows you to then step back and go and really do appreciate all of those things that you have. And of course that sounds so oversimplified, but sometimes staying within the simple is important.
Right.
Staying within the simple, because you're right.
sure.
Life is just we're just inundated with so
It's
much
hectic,
information
man.
and constantly, and
It's
just
hectic.
taking a step and just stopping whenever possible, and that's what makes it. We're so lucky to have surfing that is that thing,
For sure.
because people search sometimes their whole life to find that thing that brings them back to that, to be able
Totally.
to see that full picture, and we have it. We've had it in our life, our whole life almost.
It's a bunch of blessings
that
for sure.
yeah, and that's really what I stay really focused on for myself and all the people I work with is just the ability to stay in the ocean so
Right.
we don't lose that part of grounding and focus and clarify. So talk a little bit about like your movement throughout the week. So whether it's fitness specific and to prepare you for surfing, but obviously just life in general, what's kind of like an average week for you of movement and fitness that you do?
Well, I just recently got into jiu-jitsu, so it's been about 5 years, maybe 4 years. I train a lot, and I've engulfed myself in the lifestyle, which is very similar to surfing, very humbling, very active, very stretchy kind of a type movement, releasing of stress, learning how to defend yourself, defend the family, defend your fellow man. Just in case anything happens, you always want to be ready in that aspect. So I've been a lot into jiu-jitsu lately. I try to hit the gym at least 2 to 3 times a week just to keep injury at a minimum, injury prevention, to stay strong. As I get older, it seems like I don't drink alcohol anymore. I'm sober right now. Like I'm really living a clean lifestyle. Try to eat good. Try to be there for my kids. Try to be there for my wife and for my just the whole family in general. With that being said, I really want to stay healthy. I really want to stay fit. I want to stay strong. I want to be able to be the relying man that I should be when it comes to if anything happens. So I took that. I've been really focusing on that for the last 3 years solidly, but I've had that in my mind for the last 5, which I really want to try to live my best life now. Whereas in my 20s, and I'm 43 now, right? So in my 20s was my really pinnacle of my surfing career. Mid 30s was kind of like I'm still going hard at it, not really taking too good care of my body, but still running like a candle burning both ends of the, like a candle burning both ends. So I'm really kind of shortening my life in that aspect. So now I've been really focused, like I was saying, really focus on health, really focus on my mind, really focus on breathing, really focus on, going to the gym, staying active, staying healthy. Jiu-jitsu is a huge part of mine and my kids' lives. The wife's she's a swimmer, so she likes to swim and stuff. So we're all ocean oriented, and we all just kind of want to be healthy and live a good lifestyle. But very active, so I'm trying to stay, in the gym a lot.
Yeah. Since you made some of those changes and started working on some of your movement and stopped drinking in the last 3 years, have you seen that influence in your day-to-day surfing? Can you obviously there's a correlation, but can you see it? Can you feel that?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, you don't, and I wasn't really a hardcore drinker to where, I'd be the occasional drinker, a couple beers a week. And, if the opportunity presented itself, I'd be like, yep, I'm going, to really turn it on. But I think the biggest thing is just having a clear set mind, not having any hangups, kind of, a lot of energy all the time, being able to do things, being reliable, responsible, being able to pick up my kids whenever I need, not being hungover, not having that little bit of fog in the morning time to, if you have a little bit of resistance to do something, making maybe I should do this, but maybe I shouldn't. That kind of a mindset. Procrastination was a huge one for me when I was kind of, dabbling in alcohol and that stuff. So I think the major part is just having a clear mind and wanting to be, reliable and responsible, which is awesome. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I couldn't, now that I'm sober and now that I don't drink at all, I was like, what was I doing for the past 20-something years? kind of thing. But it's great, man. I still enjoy being around my family that's, having a couple beers and stuff like that. I don't find anything wrong with it. It's a personal journey for myself right now, and I think it's great.
Yeah, it's interesting for to be able to step back. So I'm going. I have a surf trip booked to Ecuador at the end in a little while, and so as soon as I booked the trip with the buddy, I was like, okay, I just call them alcohol vacations,
Right.
I just go, okay, I'm gonna train, and so like if the last 3 months, I haven't had a drink,
right,
and it's that aspect of it. It's a few things. One, like you mentioned, it's clarity.
Right.
Two, it's also saves money. Like
For
you're like,
sure.
wow, like craft beer's expensive. Like
Yep.
it should be. They're craftsmen and they have good ingredients and it should be expensive. I was like, wow, like that freed up some money there. And
Right.
then the third one too is I I make my own beer. I have friends that do that.
Cool.
So I like to talk about it. I
Right.
like the craftsmanship of it. That's what I miss. But what's interesting is how much time it freed up because like on the weekends when we're going somewhere, go out to dinner with the family or whatever, it'd be like, oh, well, let's stop by this place. I'll try, this is a new brewery. We'll try this place,
Right.
And I was just like, none of my thoughts were even having to go to that.
Right.
So it's just like, you take these breaks and it just, whatever that is, whether it's, a positive or a negative, it's just that step back and
Right.
just like to get a larger view of something. It
Totally.
helps.
I mean, to tell you the truth, I've been really craving like a beer lately,
Yeah.
but I just find for myself right now, I'm a little bit better off without it at this point in my life. And maybe, I go on an epic surf trip and get barreled all day. I'm definitely going to have a couple beers for sure. I mean, I don't see, there's nothing wrong in that stuff. So.
Well, that's the beauty of that, and that's that idea, like that taking that vacation. It is that check-in. It's just that because a lot of times, I'm very careful for myself that people that really do struggle with addiction.
Yeah.
There's a component of that. It's a health component. It's a mental health component.
Right.
And I think anybody can get there.
Yeah.
But then there's the component where it's just the taking over. It's a habit that you're in a cycle of something where your mind is craving that escape because we are so inundated. So you're like, oh, I'm gonna have that, later tonight. You're looking for it, and that's a bad pattern, and that's a bad habit. So those two, I'm careful to delineate between those two because this struggle over here that anybody I think can get to
For sure.
is something that's of course much more overwhelming and needs much more support and is a health specific medical need that we have. And then the other side of it is again, just take that stop. It's strength. It's that ability to say, hey, I'm going to try this and focus on this to free up this energy, mental, physical, to pursue other things. I think everybody can benefit from that.
It's crazy. I lost my brother a couple years ago to alcoholism. I was already on this little journey that I was on, but I find it very challenging for myself to grapple with willpower. The tiny voices that are in your head a lot of the times throughout the day, and to trying to pull you into whether it be something not very healthy for yourself, a bad decision, whether if it's a small one because they sneak up on you very quickly. The small little tiny things turn into, you make molehills into mountains was what my mom used to say. So it's, and watching my brother struggle with that stuff was very heartbreaking, and it took a toll on my family, and it took a toll on, everybody around him. And the only person that was really struggling was him, man. I mean, it was a horrible thing for him to go through. It's very subtle. It comes on very subtle. And before you know it, you're engulfed in it. And before you know it, you can't live without it. And before you know it, you're getting advice to not do it anymore, but it doesn't matter. So it's a very subtle thing. It was a horrible journey for my family and for him to go through. But I mean, he's in a better place now. And that was one of those, I was already on the journey, like I said before, but that was just another really strong kind of decision, a little bit more, reassurance that I'm on the right path, because I feel like that little part of his gene runs in my family. In him, it kind of exposed that. My father was a very strong man. He's not an alcoholic, but he likes to have a good time. My mother's, she's the same way. My sister's very stern, and she's very health orientated. And, I found myself kind of leaning towards that in my 20s and in my early 30s. And then I kind of grew out of it and tried to take a different path, which I'm on now. But man, that's like, I've seen both avenues of where that can lead, from a first person point of view, and from a family point of view, and from a friend point of view, and from a brother point of view. So it's, Yeah, man. I mean, I'd have to say that's a tough one. That's a very
Yeah.
tough one.
But you're taking a tragic experience that you have, and
Yeah,
the experience of that, of coming in and letting it manifest in a way to positively influence not just your actions but your perspective on things. And
for sure.
like, I know we both have kids, and this comes up a lot for me because I don't have those dependency issues in my immediate family.
Yeah,
My mom didn't really like to drink at all, and my dad, like, as we got older, he actually would have a beer with me just to talk about it as a way to like connect, really.
right.
But he didn't really drink when I was younger. But it is one of those things of, now that my daughter's 15, like, I find,
Oh
like,
gosh, yeah,
we have these conversations that are not easy but so necessary, because
totally.
I do think back of when I was younger, and growing up through the 80s and everything, and all of the just say no campaigns and all of these things that had a very good positive objective, but really had a disconnect between the realities of things and feeling this feeling of being lied to, that
Right.
was really powerful.
Right.
And caused me to really question a lot of things in a way where I take such an opposite approach with my daughter. She's a great student. She plays volleyball, but we have these conversations in a way of trying to be as truthful as you can without overwhelming them with the realities of life that are coming. Let
Right.
them digest them in small pieces,
Right.
but having these conversations with her of, this isn't going to just suddenly put you into this terrible place.
Right.
But it's like you said earlier, if you try marijuana or you try a drink, it is one of these things that only complicates what you're going through right now. And this growth that you're going through mentally and physically, it just makes things more difficult.
For sure.
So life is long, and that's hard for, of course, like, trying to put yourself back into that mental space of being a teenager.
Oh, man.
How overwhelming everything is. And of
It's
course,
insane.
so self-centric, of course, because
Right.
that's survival. You got to get through these things. It's so overwhelming. I try to remind myself, but that's where those conversations, my wife and I, we do this a lot. We have these things like, okay, we just have to keep talking about this. And this goes back to something my father said to me when I was younger. I remember he said to me, during those years of starting to get to teenage years and do this stuff, he said, at any point, you can call me. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what time of night it is. It doesn't matter what you're doing. I will come pick you up, and you will never be in trouble.
Yep.
There will be consequences for your actions, but you will never be in trouble. And
Yep.
that stuck with me. And I say that
sure.
to my daughter all the time.
Yep.
Like, we are here for you. Don't ever question if you're in a situation. So it's kind of one of those things. It's just like having these difficult conversations and stuff that I think this is maybe something that our generation has started to do better.
Totally.
Is have these conversations with your family, and everything isn't so tamped down or so
Yeah.
taboo. You hope.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's definitely a more like my daughter's. She's turning 12. She's turning 13, but this is the point where she feels like she's like 25, 21. You know what I mean? She's very mature for her age. My son's 10, and I'm actually expecting a new baby too in June.
Oh, congratulations! That's
Yeah, man, we're
incredible.
keeping it going. But so the 12, dude, we've had more ups and downs with my daughter in this last 4 months probably, and she's barely going to be 13. So we're trying to teach her these very important parts of life, which is, respect, being honest, and like we always tell her, when it comes to lying, let's try to not do that. We're all kids. We were all kids at one point, right? We know that, so if you tell us the truth the first time, you're not going to get in trouble. It's when you spin those little tiny things into lies where you end up lying to keep up with your other lies. That's when you get in trouble. So we're trying to teach them that aspect, to be honest, have faith, be respectful, So yeah, it's a tough, especially for teenagers now. They have so much access to everything. They fast forward, into adulthood pretty much. I mean, they could go. Thank God we took the cell phone away a long time ago. It was just for like communication things. Call dad after school or call dad or whatever, something like that. But we took that thing away. My son's never had a cell phone. And I think those are just one of the things that we want to try to have some structure with, for my kids. And that's just to kind of keep them as kids right now. You have plenty of things to keep yourself busy. We keep them busy with jiu-jitsu. We keep them busy with, gymnastics. And my son loves to surf. So between surfing, gymnastics, swimming with with the wife and swim school and all that stuff, they have very little time to kind of venture into the thing where it's the unknown of after school lifestyle, and where the kids don't have anything going on at home, and they don't, that's a very dicey situation right there. So yeah, we're all trying our best, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what it comes down to, right? Like,
for sure,
just being present. And as you're going into parenthood and becoming a father, everybody's giving you advice and all this stuff. And I remember this one older client that I had, and all this advice, it's meaningful, and they come from a good place, but sometimes it's this disconnect, whether it's different generations or just distance. Their kids are all grown, and so
right.
We remember things differently. But this older client that I had, that's what she said to me. She said, you're going to get a ton of advice and take what you can in and do all that, but just always remember to be, this is a theme, of course, with surfing through it, is always just be present.
Right.
Just be present. You're going to do your best.
Right.
You love your child. Doesn't have a question. Just be present as much as you can, which is really difficult.
Right.
It's difficult. Like you said, we're getting into all these responsibilities, all these other stuff going, and we're just moving. And I heard words flash back to me often. I just like, okay. And it's like going through these times. Yes, teenage, like if you polled parents, like, okay, what was the hardest stretch of there? Who's going to pick, anything over the teenage years? It's this challenge that we're all going through, and it's ubiquitous a lot of the times. But that same idea is present, which is you're just there for them through a time that if they know they can count on you, whether they talk about that or admit that, they know it's there.
Yeah.
And I think back on my parents, who were just rock solid. I knew they loved me. I knew I had a comfortable home. I'm so thankful for that now as I've gotten older, and can really appreciate that. And that foundation just allows you to make these decisions to go try these things, knowing that you can come back to this loving, solid place. I mean, that's it. If you have that, man, you can do almost whatever you want.
Yeah. And, and I'm not trying to say that I'm just trying my best. I've learned the hard way. I've gone through my trials and tribulations as a young man, as a teenager, and all those things. I made tons of mistakes. I was a hair away from going the opposite route, so it's like, I'm just speaking from experience and try to get the kids going on the right path, so it's a tough one, man. Life isn't easy.
Is. No.
That's for sure.
Life is not for the weary, for sure.
Yeah, man. When you start bringing the little ones up and stuff, you really kind of get a full circle of it all.
Oh yeah, for sure. So let's talk a little bit about the work that you do with the foundation. So talk about that, the name of it, what you're doing with that. Let's talk about that.
So Mauli Ola Foundation, it's a cystic fibrosis kind of centered foundation. We deal with genetic disorders. We take kids surfing as a natural, another avenue for treatment naturally. So the saline air that comes off of the saline mist that comes off of a crashing wave is also mimicking what they have to go through in the hospital, which is a compression vest with the saline tube going over their mouth. And it pretty much, in the hospitals, it'll pump their chest to break up the mucus in their lungs. Then the saline air and the saline mist that's in the mask kind of aids them in that expelling of the mucus. So we, back in, I don't know, what was it, 2000, 9 in Australia. They had a couple doctors that realized the connection between it, surfer doctors that realized the connection between it. Mauli Ola Foundation in its inception was founded by James and Charlie Dunlop. They're big geneticists, I believe that's what the name is. Like science, we used to call them science guys. So and they were basically just at the forefront of this whole thing. They owned a big company called Ambry Genetics, which I worked at for a little bit after my pro surf career. Kalani Robb, it was funny. We had a bunch of surfers in there, and it was we were like the bad news bears of the genetic testing facility world. It was classic. But yeah, I mean, it's been a great road. Hans Hagen is my director. He's my boss. Hans Hagen, if you're unfamiliar with him, he's a great surfer. He's been, he's been in the limelight for surfing for a long time. He's in this nonprofit philanthropic aspect of the whole game now. Me and him make a great team. We have another guy that works with us, another surfer. His name's Jackson Bala. And yeah, we just try to do our best with, giving back to the cystic fibrosis community, creating programs, doing hospital visits. We run surf experience days. That's what they're called. We do that in the summer months. So we have all the way down from the north coast of California down to the southern coast. Then we go to New York and we do the whole eastern seaboard with surf experience days. So we have, and that's the beauty of it too. All of our friends that we grew up surfing competitions with, they all own surf schools now.
That's
so
awesome.
Will Scudden in New York, Sam Hammer in New Jersey, one of our other buddies in Virginia Beach. He wasn't on the pro circuit, but he owns a surf school. Who else? Benny Bourgeois in South Carolina, or North Carolina, and then we have Todd Holland in Florida. So it's like all these guys that own surf schools. So we go team up with them. We create awesome programs for the kids to come out, gifting, a bunch of give back stuff. We have art books, pen sets, a bunch of surf. A bunch of the surf industry gives us prizes and donations for this stuff. We have Morgan Faulkner in Texas, that he runs a great surf school down there. So we have all of these guys put in place throughout the United States coastal communities, and we kind of make a whole summer journey throughout the whole eastern seaboard over to Texas, then back to California. So it's a great program that we have.
Are you traveling to those surf experience days and physically going to those? Oh,
yep.
Wow, yeah.
Yep. So it's pretty much myself and Hans, and we used to have a great team put together with a lot of Hawaiian guys, because it was mainly focused on the name Mauli Ola Foundation. So we had great, this is for me. I'm a kid from Whittier, and I did my hard rounds of trying to come up in the surf world. I became a professional surfer around 1920. I won the U.S. Amateur Championships. I've always looked up to these guys, Sonny Garcia, these Gavin Beshens. I can't go down the list of the names. There's so many of them. But those are like my two main guys who I kind of was looking up to at that point. Just Sonny Garcia has always been a great role model. He's been a great, power surfer. He's, led the Hawaiian flag for a long time, and he's done a lot of great things, a world champion. So we've had a lot of these biggest, baddest name guys helping some of the sickest kids in the give back aspect, so it's been a great journey. I've been there for going on 11 years now, 10 years solid. So I've been engulfed in this give back stuff for a long time. It's been awesome. It's been a great ride. We've helped a lot of kids.
Yeah, we met at Operation Surf. First time when I met Teddy was both instructing in there, and the similarities of working with your foundation, that connection of sharing surfing with somebody that has not experienced before, not only watching them on their first wave, but sharing that connection to the ocean. It's hard to describe how just amazing that feels. How it goes back to being humbled again but also just being able to share this on its purest joy. That there's something so
Brother
it
Van
feeds you in a way.
Yeah, Brother Van created a great program with that. Often with that Operation Serve, Van Carozza, man, he's done such a great job with that. I mean, I got to give my hats off to him. He's done such an awesome job with that. And for cystic fibrosis and that stuff, it's a genetic disorder. So I think the biggest part for me to walk away after a surf experience is not only for the kids getting their natural saline treatment, having some fun, being around kids that they have to. So coming back to this, the last couple of years with COVID and all of that stuff, these kids have been living this kind of a lifestyle since they were born. 6 feet of separation, wearing a mask, not being close to the kids in the hospital that have the same disease. They can't be cystic fibrosis patients can't be next to other cystic fibrosis patients because they're very, they can exchange germs very easily with each other. So which makes them susceptible to getting sick very easily. So they've been living this kind of lifestyle since they were born. They haven't been able to play with kids next to them. They haven't been able to, go out on the soccer field, to run the grass through their feet, to kick a soccer ball, to throw a ball next to each other without somebody being there with a sanitation wipe, things like that, And then they get down to the beach and they could touch the same board. They could do all of these things and play next to people because the saline mist and the environment that's on the beach and next to the ocean kind of creates that antibacterial, space for them to where they can communicate and they can play and they could do all of these things with each other. The cool thing about it is watching the parents, more importantly, the parents watching their kids smile, watching their kids play in the sand, watching their kids have fun in the ocean, learning a new thing that they've never done before, watching them, just absolutely watching them enjoy their life for once and not being stuck in the hospital, not being bedridden for months on end. And, they have to be healthy enough to come down to the beach. But at the same time, man, it's such a beautiful thing to watch other people thrive in an environment where they normally haven't been in, and watching the parents smile and conversate with other parents, talk to them about, different situations and how their kids have handled this and how their family has done this and that. It's just awesome, man. The foundation has opened my eyes up to giving back more than anything in my whole entire life. And when you're first introduced to, you really have to open up yourself to be not so selfish. And surfing is a very selfish sport. You're always out looking for your best wave. You want to get your best tube. This is my wave. It's not yours. So I had a tough time in the very beginning of this whole foundation give back thing to try to separate myself from being so selfish. It was a very challenging thing for myself to go through. And then what really opened my eyes is we had a hospital visit program to where we would go in and see these kids in the cancer wards and in these cystic fibrosis wards. And, we talk to the child life specialists that kind of run that program. And we see all of these kids, man, they don't have the opportunities that everybody else has at all. They, like I said, they can't run their feet through the grass to play soccer. They can't, kick a soccer ball. They can't throw a baseball. They can't hit a 3-pointer from playing basketball. They can't do any of these things. I mean, sometimes they're bedridden for months on end, or for even a year. Sometimes they have to stay in the hospital getting treatments and stuff. So, it's just crazy, man. Like it's a very humbling and eye-opening experience that I had with this whole journey. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to growth, right? It goes back to growth of being able to step out of your own needs. And of course, we're human. And so we come from that perspective, that first person perspective. So when we fill our weeks and our months with touches that help us step out of that,
right,
it really does. Not only can we do so much good because we have resources and we have time and we have energy to put towards something, but then it feeds our own ability to grow and to then be more present with our kids. All the themes that we've just talked about, having that ability to have service in your life for whatever your passion is. Find
Right.
that thing,
Right.
and then we're so fortunate to have had experiences where then that is coupled on the foundation of surfing, and to be able
Right.
to share that part. Oh my gosh. I mean,
Absolutely. You
it's
know,
exponential.
if there's anything that I could ever advise anybody, it's just to find a nonprofit, whether it's surfing orientated or just Toys for Tots, anything, to where you just give back to people who are in need, to look at a different point of view other than your own personal journey, and see what it's like for other people to be struggling and things like that. And then that kind of softens up your heart. It kind of gets you it puts you in a different headspace than you've ever been before. It's a very important thing for, I think, humanity to kind of dive into, as far as growth. Like you were saying, I wouldn't be the man who I am today if I didn't go through those trials and tribulations that I went through when I was younger, or got into this nonprofit work. It's made me be a better parent, a better dad, wanting to, give back to others. It's huge, man. Like, just that little part, the little tiny part of giving back to people who are in need, of, making a little bit of an impact in somebody's life. Like, that's huge, man. I don't
Yeah.
think there's anything more beneficial than that for your personal life,
Yeah.
and especially if you're healthy, if, even if you have, some struggles of your own, that can also put it back into full circle, to where you might be able to want to go with your life, and give you a little bit of a higher sense and a higher power, and, looking for faith or something like that, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, it gives that ability also to remind yourself or identify that your struggles, you're not alone with them.
Oh, geez.
Again, it comes back to almost that first person. We have this thing where, like, I'm the only one that is struggling with this, and you
Yeah.
could go down the list of whatever that struggle is, and that ability to then connect with others that are not necessarily struggling with what you're struggling with, but just having that shared experience, it
Yeah.
allows you to then again open up,
Open up. Yeah.
be vulnerable, share, and then make connection. I think that's one thing that is happening with us now. You mentioned the phone, you mentioned other screens, and there's that false sense of connection that
Right.
might come with that.
Right.
And nothing's all good or all bad. So,
Right.
the tools that the technologies that we have available to us can be wonderful,
Oh, it's
but I
huge.
think it can perpetuate that false sense of connection, where when you come and you personally and physically connect with somebody on a shared service like that, like we talked about, lessons and sharing that with it, that ability to connect on that level it's very hard to replicate that away.
Right.
So having that, creating those things, opportunities in your life to make that connection is huge.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So obviously you're through that foundation, you're teaching them to surf. Do you also give lessons yourself to more the general population? Is that something that you're involved with, or?
Yeah. I'm actually, so I just started a website. It's called Coaching by Ted. So it's basically,
Nice.
it's surf lessons. It's Teddy Navarro coaching. You know what I mean? It's something that I do. I mean, I've been in this game for a long time of, surfing. So I know how to teach people. And then with the background of teaching kids that are disabled how to surf, it's really helped me out in just beginner lessons in general. So I do beginner lessons. I also coach, the kids that come to Huntington Beach for the NSSA championships. So I have a couple
Nice.
kids from Hawaii. Last year was one of my first, like, really successful years with that. I had one kid come from Maui, and he won the NSSA Explorers division under my coaching. So it was a really awesome thing. I had another semifinalist, and a whole slew of little, like, kind of achievements and stuff like that. So that I've been doing that. And then, yeah, I mean, that's one of those things, man. It's just
Yeah.
all from surfing. It's really cool.
Yeah. And just being able to share that it's that other thing, like where you're able to impart not just your knowledge and expertise, but that connection, and being able to see that manifest in somebody doing something. That's a unique experience,
I also ran a couple years ago, I was sponsored by Hurley, and I ran the Airbnb, what was it? I forgot the name.
Oh, was it like tied to an experience or something?
Yeah, surf experience. Like it was with
Yeah.
Hurley, so I ran the whole Hurley Surf Club. It was a Hurley
nice.
Surf Club, so I ran that whole thing. I was the Huntington Beach representative for Airbnb, so I had tons of people coming from around the world and booking my kind of surf lesson stuff. And then I also was sponsored. Well, I'm sponsored by GoPro currently still, but I had like a drone, and so I was filming the guys with the drone. I was getting POV stuff with them. I was doing all kind of. I had my hands dipped in like 5 different things. It was pretty cool at that point.
That's a lot of hats to carry. That sounds exhausting. When you're giving lessons itself is like when I was younger up here. I mean, it's a little different when the water's 55 degrees, but
yeah,
man, I would do like a few lessons in a row, and I couldn't believe how exhausted you get. Yeah, because I think a big part of it is, well, you're on their tail and you're doing all that stuff, but then it would be go get in the water. So up here, the water's about 55 degrees year round. But you're also sitting on your board, so a lot of your body's out of the water.
Yep.
So you realize, when you're giving a lesson, you're fully immersed, and then you come out into what's fairly a warm day, and then your body temp you warm back up, and then you go get cold again, and at the end you'd just be like, I would go home and just like I'd have to take a huge power nap.
For sure, you get cooked, man. That's what I'm saying. It's like that was exhausting, but I think I had a little bit of stoke on my side, so I would overcome some of that stuff. And then also too, in that whole aspect, you're talking consistently. Yes. You're stoked for them, and you're happy, and you're cheering them on, and you're wiping out at the same time. And I've never been so cold in my life, but then getting so hot in my life, and it's like, yeah, for sure, I understand. That's a great great explanation for sure. Oh shoot, man. I got 3 kids. I want to take my kids and my family to all of the places that I went as a professional surfer, except spend time in those areas. Because when I was a professional surfer, I was really closed-minded, and I didn't want to explore. I didn't want to do anything. I'd fly into these exotic places, Portugal, France, Spain, I mean, you name it, Japan, like all of these, South Africa. I'd fly all these places, do the event, stick around the event site, lose or win, and I'd fly home. I mean, it was like, now that I look back, I'm just like, man, could I have had any more sense in my brain to just look and dive into the culture, feed myself some of that awesome food that's surrounded in the area, go and venture off and look at all these other places. But so that's my main goal. That's my goal for my family from now on, and raise the kids to be the best humans that they could be, surfers.
Well, Teddy, thank you so much for joining us on the Surf Strong Elite Show. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been great to kind of go into what you're doing on your day-to-day and raising kids and what you've learned, and I just appreciate you taking the time.
No, thanks, man. And also, you've done such a great service with this whole thing, man. And you keep going with it. You're pushing people, and you're opening up. You're opening up the doors so other people can hear stories and trials and tribulations of their lives. And maybe somebody is in an area where they need to hear these things, and it could provide some light and love. You know what I mean? So, hats off to you, my brother.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, you're doing a great job, Greg.
Thanks again to Teddy Navarro for joining us on the Surf Strong Elite Show. All of the topics that we touched on today will be on the show notes. You can find the show notes for this and all other episodes at surfstrongfit.com/podcast. Please subscribe, like, comment on this episode and all of our social media channels that you can find at surfstrongfit. It helps us reach more surfers, and that is our goal, to help surfers stay strong in the ocean till their last breath. We'll see you next time.